Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the United She Stands podcast. We are rolling with our fabulous Ohio candidates today. We have Tom Herner, who is running for state representative in District 37, which is the Dayton area. And a few minutes in, he describes more specifically where in Dayton. So if you are in this area, this may be your district. Look it up. Tom is a lifelong Ohioan, Centerville High School graduate, and Wright State University alum. Raised by union parents and conceived through IVF, Tom is a direct product of the public schools and reproductive health care he now fights to protect. With over a decade of experience in banking, internal auditing, and entrepreneurship, Tom brings a sharp eye for accountability to Columbus. He is dedicated to lowering the cost of living by expanding the Homestead Exemption, fully funding public schools through the Fair Funding Plan, and ensuring Ohio remains a state where reproductive freedom is a protected right. Learn more about Tom's campaign at tomforohio.com. It's in our show notes, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Tom, hello. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. All right, we're going to dive right in. So you've spent over 25 years in the Dayton area. What does this community mean to you, and what was the moment you decided to stop watching from the sidelines and actually run for office?
To me, Dayton means everything. A lot of people don't realize this, but the modern world could not exist without Dayton, Ohio. We invented airplanes. We invented Freon. We invented the pop-top can. Things that the Cheez-It was invented here. Things that you have in your everyday life that we all take for granted didn't exist 150 years ago, and then some people in Dayton made it so. And that's what I love most about this place. That my shirt here has the Wright B flyer, which is the first. It wasn't the first airplane that they did, but it was the first. It's the one that you think of when you think of the Wright brothers. The other part of your question was. What made me decide to get off the sidelines and start running. When I was 4 years old, I always knew I was going to run. When I was 4, if you asked me, what are you going to do in your life? I would have told you I'm going to have a restaurant. And I'd be quick to say, I don't want to be a chef. I want to be able to walk around to all the tables and see all the families, everybody having a good time, and be able to facilitate that. I wouldn't have said facilitate. What I didn't have the words for at the time was I wanted to be a community builder. When I was 4, that's what community looked like to me. It was a restaurant. That's where you go with your family. That's where you get to see grandma and grandpa and uncles, and everybody is having a good time. I always knew I was going to run for state house. I always knew for me, it's about Ohio. You probably won't ever see me doing anything on the national stage that isn't Ohio focused. I do believe Ohio, the heart of the nation, is, well, the heart of the nation. In 2024, I was pretty convinced that despite the ballot language being horrible for the gerrymandering amendment, I was pretty convinced that we were going to win that. I was convinced that Kamala was going to win the presidency. I really didn't expect the second wave of Trump, and then to see us lose the gerrymandering amendment again, and seeing that at home, my rep has never run against somebody. He's never run a real race. It's always been just him unopposed. And that's because there's not a whole lot of support for people just trying to run here as a Democrat. And I said, I have to go and do this. I was going to wait until he would no longer be able to run, and then he wouldn't be able to run from a place of incumbency. But I don't know if you guys have ever followed the legislative record of the representative that I'm trying to unseat, but he was the sponsor in the House last year for SB1.
That's your guy, huh? Yikes.
That's my guy. He's not my guy.
Right. I'm sure you're not claiming him.
Yeah. The most recent thing that he's done in the legislature was introduce a bill to try to eliminate capital gains tax.
Nice.
None of this stuff reflects my district.
Yeah.
So I decided I had to run.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love that. I mean, It's bittersweet, right? I love that you're running, but, earlier than you thought, but I hate that it's, his terrible actions that are causing you to do this. But as you've mentioned, he's a Republican and he is not representative of your district. Can you just describe, I know District 37 is Dayton area, but for our listeners, hopefully some of who are in Dayton, can you say the Dayton towns and whatnot that District 37 covers?
Absolutely. District 37 is the southern section of Montgomery County and a little bit of the western half. So it's Moraine, West Carrollton, which is kind of like if you think about Dayton, Moraine and West Carrollton are right here. And then it cuts down the western side of Dayton to Miami Township, Centerville, Washington Township, and a little bit of Jefferson Township.
Gotcha. So as we mentioned, he's not really representing your people. Can you share why you think this seat is flippable?
Absolutely. This seat is pretty much decided by two of those communities. Centerville and Washington Township, they account for 44% of the registered voters, something around there. And they're about 66% of the people who actually vote in this race. So that Centerville and Washington Township kind of operate as one thing. They choose this race. And when I look around and talk to people, like we were discussing today, like school lunches in Centerville. At the high school, something like 20% of all of the lunches are subsidized. That is a statistic that would shock most people in Centerville, I think. Our current rep hasn't done anything at all in his time in the legislature to alleviate any of that. I think in the past, people choose not to run because nobody's crazy enough to do it. And the county party doesn't, it's not that they don't support it, but they have other battles they have to fight. In 2024, we lost Sherrod Brown's race on culture issues. In 2026, the electricity bill is 30% higher than it was last year. The gas prices are out of control. At this point, the voters are feeling it in their wallets. That's reflected by 20% of the high schoolers being on subsidized lunches. I think this time our voters they're going to be open to some change. They won't be looking at culture issues. They'll be looking at their pocketbook.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can see that trend, right? In 25 elections, in the 26 elections that have happened so far, districts are shifting very heavily, like by double digits, away from Republican politicians. So absolutely, we should be running in every district. Thank you for running. Now's the time for us to flip some of these seats. Okay, we're going to talk more about the wallet and the pocketbook here a little bit later. But first, I want to talk about public corruption because it's something that you talk a lot about. So specifically, the First Energy HB6 scandal and the recent $600 million given to a billionaire in the state budget. So for listeners who may not follow state health politics as closely as all of us do, can you break down what's happening and why it should make every Ohioan upset and angry about the way our tax dollars are being spent?
Absolutely. Let's talk first about House Bill 6. That was kind of like a activating thing for me. For those of us who don't know, in 2018, an energy company bought over 30 House seats by using dark money donations to C4s throughout Ohio. They spent about $61 to $67 million. They bought over 30 seats and the House Speaker's seat. They also put in their preferred governor and preferred lieutenant governor, which is also a pretty important part of this. A lot of people think just about the state house aspect, where they corrupted a set of legislators and then started pushing legislation that benefited the energy company. That was House Bill 6. They also corrupted the Public Utility Commission of Ohio. The governor of Ohio is able to appoint over 2,000 seats, largely to regulatory and advisory positions throughout the state. One of those is the Public Utility Commission of Ohio, and they set a lot of rate decisions for our energy companies and utilities throughout Ohio. In other states like Georgia, that's a position that the people would vote on. But in Ohio, If you own the governor's seat, then you own PUCO. In 2018, after getting Larry Householder installed as the speaker, who, by the way, originally, he was a speaker a decade before that, but there maybe even longer, but then left because the FBI was getting too close to him. They installed him as the speaker, and they passed legislation that gave the energy company $1.3 billion. Now, if you read the LSC fellows, every time a bill gets put out, they do a little summary, and it goes on the State House website and for everybody to read. So they shouldn't have to read the whole thing. If you read that, the one that was produced for House Bill 6 from 2018, it's pretty clear how this helps the energy company and not so clear what Ohioans are getting out of it. Something interesting out of Dayton specifically even is at the time, the minority speaker of the House, so the top Democrat, that was our guy, Fred Strahorn. And he's the only person in the House who said, this is pay to play. I don't want to see anybody vote for this. I don't want to see any Dems go along. And they took his speaker position for that at the very next opportunity in 2019.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for him for doing that. And any legislator who will stand up against corruption, even understanding that they'll lose their seat for it. Larry Householder was arrested for this in, I think, 2020. Yeah, it was 2020. It was in the summer in a pre-dawn raid at his farm. They also arrested a number of lobbyists involved with this and the former head of the Republican Party for the state of Ohio, Matt Borges. Larry Householder is currently serving a 20-year prison bid for this. Matt Borges is out early. He was sentenced to 5 years. He did not serve the entire 5 years. It is now 2026, and we still do not have convictions for the executives from the energy company, the business masterminds behind this. And that's a problem. The energy company itself pled guilty to felony bribery charges and paid over $250 million in fines. 2 lobbyists have killed themselves in connection with this. Many other lobbyists have turned state's witness. The reason that we don't have a conviction today is because our Attorney General's office, the people who were prosecuting this, made a deal with the defense counsel and the judge that they would not give 13 facts to the jurors. Among those 13 facts is that First Energy pled guilty to felony bribery charges. Another one is that Chuck Jones, the CEO of First Energy, upon getting released from custody when he first got taken in for questioning, in the dark of night, puts on a dark hoodie, dark sweatpants, takes a bottle of wine over to a former senior vice president of First Energy's house, Dennis Chack, knocks on his basement window, goes in and says, "Hey, buddy, I need you to lie to everybody, to the investigators, to your lawyers. We gotta lie about this and make sure that nobody knows what happened." That's something that Dennis Chack has testified to, but that wasn't allowed to be shown or transmitted to the jurors in that case. This is why it's so important that we have a Democrat, that we elect John Kulowicz for our Attorney General next year, or this year, to take office next year. I don't think he'll make a deal like that with the defense counsel. It should have never taken 9 years for us to get that, to get the trial in the first place, and it never should have been a mistrial. I think there were only 2 jury holdouts on this one. I'm pretty pissed off about that. I don't know about you guys and everybody else that's listening, but the fact that an energy company has the ability to buy our legislature and pass legislation that hurts all Ohioans, and the guys who made the choice to do that face nothing. I mean, First Energy is even bankrolling their defense, and these are guys that got fired from First Energy.
Wow.
It's wild.
I think something that surprises me, and I'll say this like as someone who wasn't, like, I didn't know any of this during the time all this was happening. So many people still don't know about this.
Mm-hmm.
That like the entire, very large people are very important, high sitting people in the Republican GOP, the Ohio GOP facilitated this. Like, I just still think this isn't like as public knowledge as it should be, which is insane because it's out there. Like, this is what kind of blows my mind sometimes is like, I would guess more than 50%, probably higher than that, much higher than that, of Ohioans have no idea really about this. Maybe they heard about like HB6 or whatever the first energy scandal, but they don't really know what happened.
I think a lot of them also, there was a book that was published about this. One of the lobbyists that killed himself wrote a tell-all book called What Do I Know? I'm Just a Lobbyist. And after he sent that to Amazon to publish, he went down to his Florida vacation home and shot himself in the head wearing a shirt that said DeWine for governor. If you read that book, it'll give you a full timeline of everything that occurred here. It also will talk about things like how Matt Borges, the former head of the GOP in Ohio, who went to prison for 5 years, or was sentenced to prison for 5 years in connection with this, it details how he had a deal with the current Attorney General, Dave Yost, to basically the Attorney General controls the special collections contracts in Ohio, and the current Attorney General had an open deal with Matt Borges that he would send all of those contracts to the collections agency that Matt Borges bought just after Yost got elected, in exchange for campaign donations. That was supposed to be Yost's ticket to the governor until Vivek got in the way of that, which is even worse. But that's a different topic. Another very bad thing going on in connection to all of this is they're trying to use it to redefine what a bribe is before the Supreme Court. There is a case going before the Supreme Court that's basically Larry Householder's appeal on the grounds that what they did, which is having an energy company funnel funds to a 501c4, which then worked in coordination with their state house campaigns and and Larry Householder's Speaker of the House campaign. They're trying to redefine a bribe such that things like that are legal. If they're able to do that, it will overturn Larry's conviction, it will overturn Matt Borges' conviction, and it will overturn the Cincinnati council member P.G. Sittenfield's conviction.
Wow.
All of that is seriously bad for not only Ohio, but all of America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for real.
So all that to say, we need non-corrupt people in office. Like, wow, is that too much to ask for?
Yeah.
Apparently it is in Ohio.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so besides like obviously the bad corruption, can you just like put a bow on this for us? A one-liner or 2 sentences here on like why should Ohioans care about that?
Ohioans should care about it because of the most recent example of it. In the last state budget, we saw $600 million being given to the Haslams, a family that owns the Browns. The purpose is for them to build a Browns stadium that will be privately owned. The state will have no rights to that, to the building, to the land, any of it. The average cost of a ticket at this stadium is going to be $200.
Jeez.
That means to take your family to the ball game, after taxes, after concessions, after extras, after souvenirs, it's going to cost more than 1 month's rent in Centerville, Ohio. That's not a state budget. That's a state betrayal. And that's what our legislature has been doing for the last 30 years under Republican rule in Ohio.
Yes.
And on top of that, the Browns are still going to suck. So
yeah, let's be real about that. But yeah,
I'm a Bengals guy, so yeah.
he's like, yeah, so they do.
Shit on the Browns, yeah. But yeah, exactly that, and at the expense of so many things, which I know we're going to get into. But yeah, thank you. Thanks for explaining that, Tom.
Yes. Another fun topic for Ohio specifically, property taxes. So yes. Ohio seniors are being taxed out of their homes and young people can't afford to even buy a home. What does meaningful relief actually look like in practice when you're sitting in the State House? And what specific policies would you push for on day one?
I'm going to take a minute and talk about how we got here, and then I'll say how we get out. The way we got here, Ohio is the most over-levied state in the country. The reason for that is, let's just take schools, for example. In the 90s, we said yeah, we'll make the lottery money and we'll take that and we'll put it towards our schools. At the very next state budget, which is an every 2-year process, we watched our legislature say, hey, how much money did the schools get from the libraries? I'm sorry. How much money did the schools get from the lottery? Oh, okay. Let's cut that from the school budget from the state. And that takes our schools back to square one. They use that same practice when we pass local levies for schools. When a community passes a levy to fund their schools more, the state legislature in the next budget will say, looks like the people at home are willing to pay more, so we can pay less. And we take your school right back to where it started. And you need another levy 2 years later and every 2 years after. We have insanely high property taxes since the cost of housing completely ballooned after COVID. And we've had almost no relief for that. We've got people who paid $100,000, $150,000 for their homes. And now those same homes are worth $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. And those same people are on fixed incomes. They're retired and they get priced out of their home. Even the Homestead Exemption doesn't fully protect them. I believe that our legislature could, and I will, expand the Homestead Exemption. I believe the Homestead Exemption should be expanded such that for those that qualify, the first $500,000 in taxable value of your home should have no tax rate on it. Again, that's only for those who qualify, but something like that would help over 700,000 Ohio households. It would cost $1.2 billion. That's 2 football stadiums for those of us playing at home. And I know where we can get half of that money. We can get the other half of that money by not following Tom Young in his attempt to get rid of the capital gains tax and instead keeping the capital gains tax intact. His plan to remove the capital gains tax would cost us about $1.2 billion a year. And that money would go towards the people who benefit from having no capital gains tax. And that's not the average citizen in my district. It's certainly not the average citizen in Ohio.
Yeah, absolutely. While you guys are at it, when you get to the state house, if you could go back to having a progressive tax rate in general on income tax, that'd be great. But different topic for a different day. So
yeah, we had a 7-tier system, and a 2-tier system is totally inappropriate.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other problem going on in housing, while we're on it, this is a little shift away from the tax part, but in the same token as the reason these property taxes are so high are because we're over levied and the cost of housing has just completely ballooned. We are also pricing young people completely out of the market. I believe Ohio should expand their Grants for Grads program. I believe that when young people are staying here, they're starting families here, they're building their careers here, we need to help facilitate that. I believe Ohio should add down payment assistance and expand their options for down payment assistance. I believe that in Ohio, for people starting families, we should be offering help with the child care. It costs, on average, an Ohio family with young kids over $10,000 a year in child care expenses. Ohio should shoulder some of that burden in order to help our families grow.
Yes. Sounds pretty pro-family, if you ask me. All right. Let's switch, actually kind of on the same vein here, I guess. So in 2023, we know Ohioans voted overwhelmingly to protect reproductive rights, and the legislature has basically fought that ever since. Voters said that's what they wanted. This issue.
I'm wearing a great shirt for this.
Oh, what are you wearing?
I belong to my people, not my government. It's actually for issue 1 in 2023.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's vote
back. Good shirt for that. Okay, so we know that this issue is deeply personal for you. Can you tell us about that and what you do in Columbus to hold the line on reproductive rights?
This one is deeply personal to me. I am the product of in vitro fertilization. My parents, they grew up in Trotwood. They dated through high school, through college, and got married right out of college. It took them 14 years to have kids. It was through IVF that they were able to. They first had my brother in 95. 2 years later, they had myself and my sister. I literally couldn't exist without access to reproductive health care. We, as a state, voted overwhelmingly to enshrine that in our Constitution. And since then, our legislature, despite seeing that, despite understanding that, has completely disobeyed the will of the people. They have refuted the choice that the citizens of Ohio made, and they've been trying to tear down our right to reproductive health care ever since. Most recently, they've been trying to do a bill that would track pregnancies throughout Ohio, which is absolutely bonkers. That it's nobody in Ohio wants that.
It's truly like a plot line from Handmaid's Tale. Like it is, It's unreal. So how would you specifically in the State House hold the line on these terrible things that are coming through the Ohio GOP?
This would be, if I'm able to flip my seat, when I flip my seat in November.
There you go.
Let's go.
That's one less vote that they have towards this. I would lobby with other Democrats, and I would try to figure out where the chinks in the armor are for Republicans. Figure out which one of them, who of them actually care about Ohioans, actually care about their health. And I would form a coalition against things like that bill that's trying to track pregnancies, things against bills that try to, we enshrine this into the Constitution, so they try to tear it down in different ways. Since they can't just change the Constitution, they try to make the tools and the drugs that help with this illegal. They try to pick specific parts of contraceptives that they're like, oh, this just won't be legal in Ohio anymore. And so despite the fact that it's in the Constitution, but you have no methods to carry it out, I would fight against things like that as much as possible. I would fight to limit the influence of religion on that topic in the State House and make sure that the will of the people is respected.
Absolutely.
I think one thing you said too was like, when you flip your seat, that's one less vote that the Republicans have. And for us specifically, because we know we're sending Dr. Amy Acton to the governor's mansion, we need to give her a veto-proof House. So if we can flip 6 seats, we do that. The Republicans won't be able to override anything she vetoes, which gives us a lot of protections.
Absolutely. Once we flip 6, we will be able to prevent all of the worst parts of the current legislature. We won't be able to repeal the damage that they've already done, but we can prevent them from going further. Yes. I always look at and I tout the fact that not a single Democrat voted yes on the budget last year because it was such an affront to the people of Ohio. After we flip 6 seats, they can't do things like that anymore.
Ooh, I can't wait until we flip more than 6.
I know. I think we're flipping more than 6 too.
I also think we are.
So a lot of our interviews with Ohio candidates have just been talking about all the shit that's happening in the State House. So continuing on that trend, school vouchers.
Yes.
All 3 of us here are a product of public schools, and the legislature just pulled $2.4 billion from public education to fund these school vouchers. What would be your case to a parent in your district who actually likes this voucher program? What would you tell them?
My case to a parent in my district that likes the voucher program would be that I'm not arguing that we should end it completely. I'm arguing that it shouldn't be a carte blanche. Anybody who applies for this gets it. I understand when there's families who, for religious reasons or other reasons, want to send their kids to a private school. I don't think that the state should be subsidizing somebody who makes over $100,000 and has 2 kids to send their kids to a private school. It's taking money away from our public schools in a awful fashion. It's a $1.2 billion a year. It's $2.4 billion in the 2-year operating budget of the state. That comes out of the General Education Fund, which is a number that starts with a 3 and ends with billion. It's the lion's share that they've redirected for private schools, charter schools. It's just not right. It's starving our public schools of resources. And furthermore, when I think about schools, I always think about my mother and my grandfather on my father's side. My mother was a special ed teacher for her entire career. My grandfather on my father's side, he ran the special education department for the state of Ohio. He was instrumental in early lobbying for students with disabilities in the 70s. He also ran the special education department for the state of Illinois. Students with disabilities are special needs kids in Ohio. They're not going to be allowed to go to these private schools. And what's going to happen is we're going to starve our public schools of resources. And in the end, it's going to be people who don't live near a private school and then our most vulnerable population that are going to these schools that are completely starved of resources, while the private schools don't follow the same standards, don't help every student equally. It's just not right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've talked a lot about the public school funding in Ohio on this, just in past episodes with past guests, even just like the two of us on some episodes. And it's, I think, probably there's a lot of issues, but I think in the state of Ohio, I think it's one of the biggest issues when it comes to the budget that I think, people really care about. People love our public schools in Ohio. And we know the stat, like 30 years ago or something, I forget the exact date, but we were ranked like 5 in the nation in public school. And because of what Republicans have done, we're now like 35th in the nation in our public school ranking. And so it is a really big issue that people really care about. Okay, we've kind of talked about the big issues. Let's move on to a couple other things here. So a lot of people, especially when they're running for office, will say that they promise to, work across the aisle. Given obviously how partisan things are on things like reproductive rights, education, all the stuff we just touched on, especially in our Ohio State legislature, what does that actually look like for you? I guess what I'm asking is where do you see real room for bipartisan cooperation that could help our state?
Data centers is the first thing that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of problems facing Ohioans that our legislators on both sides can work together to solve. I look at the legislation introduced by Representative Tristan Rader earlier this year. I think it was Bill 706. That was a bipartisan bill aimed at causing data centers to pay for their fair share of all the electricity that they use. We shouldn't be starting the conversation at what can the city and what can the citizens subsidize for the data center. Problems like that, I think we can tackle on a bipartisan basis. Things that don't have to do with culture wars. I think the property tax issues in Ohio that we're facing, I think we can tackle those as a bipartisan group. Which for everybody listening at home, there's probably going to be a ballot initiative this year that will be on. There'll be an issue on the ballot that's trying to abolish property taxes in Ohio. It is so important that you vote no. If that passes on January 1st of 2027, it will be illegal for Ohio to levy property taxes. That will cost our state $21 billion a year. And our entire state budget is $61 billion. I believe our lawmakers have an obligation to provide bipartisan solutions to that.
I think those are great examples.
Absolutely. So we're going to start wrapping up here. You're asking people to vote for you in the May 5th Democratic primary. What is one thing you want voters to take away from this conversation with you?
In the May 5th primary, I want you to vote for Tom Herner. For your state representative, for your Democratic state representative. When I face off against Tom Young in November, our voters are going to say, well, things haven't really gotten better for me in the last 8, 12 years. They're going to look at their pocketbook and not the culture war issues that have kept the Republicans in power in Ohio. They're going to look at the price of gas. They're going to look at the cost of groceries. They're going to look at their electricity bill. And then they're going to say, who's been in office this whole time? And what have they done for me? They're going to look at Tom Young sponsoring SB1. They're going to look at Tom Young putting forward legislation to end capital gains tax. And then they're going to recognize which legislation has he not put forward? There's something key missing from there, and it's anything that helps the voters in our district. I think when they look at the two of us next to each other on the ballot, they're going to make a choice for something new.
Absolutely. I think so. I mean, I'm sure you're probably already thinking about this, but there's got to be something with the Tom name.
I was already thinking that.
Choose the right Tom.
It's gonna.
Can we do anything with that?
I think it's going to break their brains at first when they say, "Oh, we have two Toms," and then they'll say, "One of them's pretty young. What's he talking about over here? Oh, he knows something. That's interesting. He knows something, and I think they'll look at the issues of the race. I think
we hope so, right? That's what we want.
Tom Young has never had. Yeah, Tom Young has never had an opponent, so we'll see. We'll see what the voters really think this year.
Yeah,
well, we're big believers. We should elect more young people, so we're all in. All right, we always like to end with this. What gives you hope right now?
What gives me hope is when I knock doors, I go out in the community and talk to the people that live here. A lot of them tell me they've never seen Tom Young before in their life. And they're so grateful to have somebody who's running and who cares enough to come to their home and talk to them about it. That gives me hope. I don't believe that my district is as red as it looks. And I don't believe Ohio is as red as it looks. I think it takes kids standing up and fighting back. My campaign is the embodiment of the kids that are fighting back.
Yeah, I love that. Like, I kind of just got chills when you said that. That's amazing.
We've been using it kind of as a way to activate young Dems. The first thing I did, I pulled it. It's going really well so far. Our entire campaign is staffed by young Dems who are committed to flipping this district. One of the first things we did was pull a turf of every single young Dem between the ages of 22 and 36 that live in this district, because I believe that those will be the people who are just out of college or getting started in their careers, probably haven't started a family yet. They're looking around and they're saying, I want to live here, but things are not looking good on the state level, and they're ready to fight back. And so we're trying to be a weather vane for them, activate as many as possible. And we look to our elders for advice on how to do it. We have so many older people in my district that see this, they see everything that's going on, and they are very concerned, but not enough young kids that are coming forward who they can train and build a bench with. And we're going to be building that this year.
That's awesome. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
Tom?
If anyone listening wants to help build that bench with you, how can they learn more about your campaign, get involved, support it, etc.? How can they do that?
I'm so glad you asked. Go to tomforohio.com. Sign up to volunteer with us, attend one of our house parties. We get, every time you put your email in, we have somebody reach out to you as soon as we can. It's usually within a couple of days. If you're somebody who signs up for canvassing, you'll get a phone call from me about that. Please go to tomforohio.com, sign up, and donate if you can. Donate something meaningful to you, because it's meaningful to me that we flip this seat. I know it's meaningful to everybody on this campaign. Please make a donation that's meaningful to you and help us flip this.
Tom, we're so excited about your campaign. Thank you so much for joining us today, and best of luck in your May 5th primary race.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.